Hello, doing another video here. Today's project is going to be a fermenting crock. We're all stuck inside for a while gardening. At some point we may have cabbages or cucumbers or green beans that we want to ferment. So this will be a useful item to have. I do these in two sections. So I've got 4 pounds of clay here for my first section. Get the 4 pounds of clay centered. Then what I'm going to do is measure the top of the 4 pound section and then throw another 3 pound cylinder to put on top of that. And the reason for doing it that way is just so I don't have to center and open up 7 pounds of clay all at once. And I feel like I can pull it up a little taller from the base, get the bottom of it just a little bit thinner if I just start with 4 pounds. And then that leaves me less trimming later, and I get more pot for my clay. I decided to skip the gloves this time because, first of all, when I was putting them on, I tore one, but also it's just a little, and I have to take them off halfway through, and I just decided I can wash my hands this time. One thing about when you're throwing in sections is you really have to be sure it's really well centered. Some kinds of forms, it's okay if it's a little off, a little wonky. If you're trying to add a section, if both pieces aren't really well centered, the whole thing is going to go not just wonky, but it just doesn't work. Okay, so I have 4 pounds centered. I'm going to go ahead and open it up using this ball opener. This is not my invention. I got this from a YouTube video by a potter who calls himself the Potter at Large. It's just PVC pipe, and the whole point of this is I'm just going to open this up. The center of these 3 pieces of PVC pipe is 3/8 of an inch shorter than the other 2 pieces. So when these touch down, I know the bottom is like 3/8 of an inch thick. Okay, so that's as far as it's going to be useful with this large of a piece of clay, but at least I know I've opened it the right distance down, and I've spared my thumbs the stress of opening this up. Okay, so now I'm just creating a floor, hopefully making it 3/8 of an inch across. I mean thick all the way across. Alright, let's see, maybe a little bit wider across the floor. And then I'll start pulling it up. So this is a form that you want fairly sturdy. So I am not going to try to pull this up just absolutely as tall and thin as I can. It's not not a vase for delicate flowers. I'm going to be packing sauerkraut into this, or somebody will be. That said, I still don't want to leave it a whole lot thicker towards the foot than I have it at the rim. You always want anything you make to be a pretty consistent thickness. So I'm still going to work to pull the clay up from the base here. sure I'm not leaving a whole lot of extra down there. Okay, so that looks pretty even. There's a lot of ways of joining sections, so now I have to think about which method do I want to use with this one. And what I'm going to do is basically a tongue and groove sort of arrangement. So the top, I'll thicken it up just a little bit, and I'm actually pushing. So there's a little bit of a groove in the top rim. It's a little thicker up here than it is down here, and a little groove with a couple of sort of almost like flanges. It's almost like I'm leaving a gallery for a lid up here. Okay. So now measure this. I'm going to measure not all the way out to the edge. I'm going to measure just outside the groove. So it's just maybe an eighth of an inch on either side narrower than this rim. So here's the edge of the pot and here's the edge of the calipers. Take this off. The second section is 3 pounds. So this one, I will open it all the way down to the back. It's just going to be a cylinder. So the reason I use 3 pounds is I'll get just as much height out of 3 pounds as I got out of 4 pounds, just because of not having a floor on it. Okay, so I've got this centered. The first thing I'm going to do is, let's see, this is a good deal narrower than my caliper measurement. So I'll go ahead and make this mound of clay shorter and wider. The thing about a fermenting crock is it needs to be wider at the top than at the base. It needs to be a consistent, continuously flared form. So I'm throwing this piece upside down. I know the top edge of this piece, there I've got it opened all the way to the back. The top of this piece that I'm going to throw needs to be the caliper measurement that I just made. Once I attach it to the first piece that I threw, the rim of that, I'm going to have to make it even wider. And so that part is this part here. Okay, so that's a little closer. So now I'll go ahead and pull this up and make a cylinder. So I'm aiming for a thickness that's pretty similar to the thickness of the other piece. So I'm just glancing at it to see how thick it is. And then of course the diameter at the rim needs to be the caliper measurement. Go ahead and pull it up a little bit thinner at the foot. You know, again, the bottom of this cylinder is going to be the top of the finished form. So once I get them joined together, I will keep pulling. There's no problem there. I just figure I might as well do as much of the work as I can right now. Let me check the caliper measurement again. Okay, we're getting really close. That looks actually really close. So the top of this needs to come to a little bit of a point there. So I'm making it's kind of narrow and pointed up here. And that's going to fit into the groove that I made on the top of the other section. Alright, I'm going to clean up the water and slip on the inside of this cylinder, because otherwise that's going to fall down into the first piece when I turn it upside down, and that just makes it messy and I have to clean it up. Alright, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wood tool and I'm going to cut right at the base of this cylinder. I'm going to make sure there's no clay attached. I don't want to, let me turn off the wheel and I'll show you. Okay, that little bit of clay that's across the bat, I don't want that attached to the cylinder when I attach it to the first piece. So I cut a groove right there. Let's see, right there, to make sure it's not clean when I cut it off. All right. Nope, one more thing. I'm also going to remove this little bit of extra clay right here. Okay. Take this off. Put this piece on. Alright, I'll turn this upside down and see how the fit looks. It actually looks like I could make this just a little bit wider. Put this one back on, and this I'll stretch it out just a tiny bit more. Double check the measurement now. Okay, that looks good. Let's try this again. I don't need to use Slipper Magic water because these are brand new, freshly wet thrown pieces. They're going to stick together. Okay, that fits inside the groove pretty well. Let me turn it and see if it's centered. Looks pretty well centered. Alright, so now I'm going to just push up that outer edge of this groove with my fingertip to smooth the two pieces together and get them joined. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to cut the bat off. I'm not going to use a wire because that's pretty awkward. I'm going to use my little needle tool and just cut right up against the bat. There we go, I'm free. Okay, so now I don't have a whole lot of messy clay hanging off right here because of that groove I cut. I do have to go inside and join the two pieces inside as well. So same thing, I'm just going to pull clay up from the bottom piece to to join the bottom piece to the top piece. Alright, that should be good. Working over the joint here and compressing them together a bit more. Alright, now I'm just going to work with this as if it was one piece, right from the start. Get this to the finished height and diameter that I want. See if I can pull up any more little bit of clay from down here. Probably not, but I'm just checking the thickness. And I'll just work my way right up through the seam and keep going. There I go, I'm past the seam now. That felt pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to keep this coming up and out, just flaring, gently flaring as I come towards the top. So I'm stretching it as I pull. The diameter I want at the top is, I really want it to be about pretty close to the width of these square bats. That just happens to work pretty well, and I'm just about there. So that's about as wide as I want it at the top. I'll keep on working on the form to make sure it's nice and straight. Basically what I want is a garbage can shape. Picture a garbage can. A little bit narrow at the bottom, and it just flares as you go up. I mean, for the same reason. You don't want your bag of garbage getting down in there and then hanging up as you try to take it out. You want to be able to dump things out of this without any trouble. Okay, so it's a little bit wide down here. As I pull this up, I'm going to try to straighten it out. So just every time I pull up, it's an opportunity to recompress and make sure that seam is really well joined together and isn't going to come apart. Still just a little bit bulged right here. So I'm going to collar in, just kind of right below the seam. Trying to make sure I have a uniform thickness. But my most important thing, if I don't have a uniform thickness, I'm going to make sure that the inside surface is straight, a nice straight flaring surface. Okay, so maybe I pull a little bit more through here. It seems like it was bulging a little bit right there. Use a rib inside to smooth it. I don't want, this is definitely a form that I don't want throwing rings inside. You want to be able to clean it easily. In general, for functional forms, I am not in favor of strong throwing rings on the inside. The surface that you're going to be using food in and that you have to be able to clean. Or if you're going to be using a knife or a fork or spoon inside, I don't feel like you want it bumping along over strong throwing rings. So I pretty much always clean up the throwing rings on the insides of forms. This also gives me an opportunity to remove any slip from the inside. And it's easier to see if there are air bubbles. If you've in the process of running the rib up it. Alright. I'll go ahead and rib the outside too. The truth is, I don't leave throwing rings on the inside or the outsides of my forms, for the most part. Alright, so once I have this form to about the shape I want, the next thing I'm going to need to do is create, let's see, I'm not totally happy with this one. I need to color it in just a little bit through here. It's not quite straight on the inside. Like I said, the outside, I can trim that to shape later. I need to make sure the inside is exactly the shape I want. And what I see is I think I have a thickened area still right in here. I'm using the metal rib on the inside because that'll straighten it up even better. Alright, so then the last thing I'm going to need to do on this is create the gallery. This is going to have a lid. I'm going to use my little rib here, and I'm going to push the top couple of inches out. And that's a really deep gallery. And the reason I make the gallery so deep is because I'm going to cut a couple of holes in the gallery above the lid, and then I'm going to put chopsticks through those holes, and that'll help hold the lid down. Some things, when you're fermenting them, they really like to push up, and a lid just won't hold them down. So those chopsticks are going to help hold the lid down and hold my ferment in place. Sauerkraut likes to just expand. So one other reason for the diameter is, here's the chopsticks. I need to make sure that it's not too wide for those chopsticks to fit in. After shrinkage, there will be plenty of extra room. The chopsticks will fit just fine. Alright, I'll chamois this edge. Okay, so now I measure for the lid. My caliper's inside. So right there, that's how wide I want the lid. And I want to make a second measurement. So second set of calipers. This set's I'm going to measure about halfway down, right about where I joined the two sections together. And this is going to be for the weight. You need a weight in there to also help hold the sauerkraut down, or help keep it under the brine. So I've got this set to the measurement right about at this point. I can go ahead now at this point and cut off a little bit of this extra clay down at the base. So the lid is 1.5 pounds of clay, and it is going to come out almost the full width of the square bath. So that's kind of helpful. Makes it easy to know when to stop pulling, when to stop making it wider. Okay, 1.5 pounds of clay. So this is a lid thrown right side up, just a very simple lid, flat with a knob in the middle. This is about the only form I throw a flat lid like that for. Most lids should be curved. So most of my lids are thrown upside down. And the reason most lids should be curved is because if they're not curved, they'll tend to sag in the firing. Where'd my sponge go? There's my sponge. Okay, so I've got this. I've got to make it about 1 inch wider. I'm going to start leaving some clay in the middle there. That's for the knob. And then I'm going to pull the rest of this clay out all the way to the edge of this bat. This is still a fairly sturdy lid. Nothing about a sauerkraut crock wants to be delicate. Something that could get a lot of hard use. And then I've got those chopsticks holding the lid on at the top. If the lid's too fragile, that might put too much strain on it. Got it all the way out to the rim there. Let's just check my measurement. That's pretty good. Compress across the lid here. So I like to leave just the outer edge of the lid just a little tiny bit thicker. And now I'm going to work on the knob. One kind of trap to watch out for is make sure that your lid is a pretty consistent thickness from here to here. Don't have it extra thick right here, because you can't really compress the clay right here where the knob is. So if you have it really well compressed all the way across right up to the stem of the knob, then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this knob, I'm going to push down right down to, if this is a 1/4 inch thick, this amount of clay right here at the center of the knob, I want to push down to a 1/4 inch there as well. And that helps allow me to compress in the center. So I don't have a solid hunk of clay right here. Okay, so that's my knob. Pressing some more across the lid, leaving the rim just a little bit thicker. I'm going to chamois that edge of the knob. Okay, and so then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to lift, using a wood tool here, I'm going to lift the edge of this lid up just a little bit. Partly I do that because that means the lid can recess just a little bit down into the sauerkraut crock, but it also means that having lifted the edge, I can take my chamois and kind of wrap it around that edge and smooth around the edge. A little awkward. take my little dull one tool and trim just a little bit of clay off from under the edge. Before I remove this, I'll just double check my measurement. Okay, that should fit perfectly. I will wire off under the lid. Okay, 1.5 pounds also for the weight. So again, the weight goes down. The first thing that goes on top of the whatever it is you're fermenting, pickles or sauerkraut, to help hold it down under the brine, and then the lid goes on top, just as extra, keep dirt or dust or insects out. So I use 1 pound, the weight is going to be narrower than the lid, but I use 1.5 pounds for it still, because the weight has to be sturdier. You're going to be pushing down on your sauerkraut with the weight. Flatten that out. Here's my other set of calipers. Need to make it just a little bit, 1/2 inch wider. That edge out just a little bit wider. So this is going to have something like a knob on it also. And what I do is make it a wider, shorter knob, because I don't want the knob I want to spread out the pressure on the knob, because the lid may be pushing down on the knob when you've got that lid pushed on with the chopsticks. So I don't want the pressure to be just right in the very center of this weight. I want the pressure to be spread out a bit more. The other reason I make, so here's that. I want to be able to hold it like this and lift it up, not have the knob too high profile. But the other thing is, when I fire this, when I glaze it, I dip the whole thing in glaze and wipe the glaze off this rim here and fire it upside down. So if this isn't wide enough, this part might sag in the glaze firing. So I just want a little bit more flare. The point of the flare is that way I can get my fingers around it to lift it off out of the fermenting crock. So that's my weight. So with this, I don't lift the edge of this up. Just smooth around the top edge here. I'll cut a little bit of the extra from underneath that edge. Alright, that's the weight. So all of these forms need basically no trimming, minimal trimming. Okay, I'm going to clean up a little bit and then I will get on to finishing. I've got one that I did yesterday, so it's ready to show you how it all goes together and what little bit of trimming I do. Alright, here's yesterday's crock. It is a very soft leather heart. It has not been wired off. I'm going to just maybe trim the outside of this just a tiny bit. There's a little tiny bit of an unevenness right here that I'd like to clean up. Let's see if that's better centered if I turn it the other way around. Maybe, I'm not sure. Alright, take a little bit of clay off through here so the outside surface is just perfectly straight. It would function just fine if it wasn't perfectly straight. I just like to make it, I like to totally disguise the place where I joined the two pieces together. The nice thing about trimming while it's still stuck to the bed is I can feel inside and I can feel the thickness. Make sure I'm not taking too much, make sure I'm not leaving clay on there that I should have taken off. Okay, so that's looks like all the trimming I need to do. Use my Dolan tool here at the base to clean up this angle. I'll go ahead and dampen this whole surface and rib it again. I'm just smoothing it with the metal rib now. Okay, now let's check the fit of the lid. Here's the lid. That fits right down into that gallery. And then the weight. What I'm going to do here is, okay, the weight fits down in there. I don't like to leave it while it's all the pieces are wet, but I put it in, tip this up and put this in. You can see it fits down about halfway down. It's about at the halfway point. The reason I have it fit that far down is, first of all, you might not necessarily make a full batch of sauerkraut. You know, if your sauerkraut only fills the pot halfway, you still want the weight on it. But the other reason is, as you're packing the sauerkraut in, if you get it filled up to here, and then you push it in with that weight, you end up getting it down to about halfway down, and then you can put more in. So you need the weight to be a little loose in there. So if the crock is full, the weight's going to sit up here with the lid on top of it, and there'll be just barely a quarter inch around the weight, not that much space. Okay, so the next important thing I need to do, neither of these forms really needs trimming. There's a little edge here that I can smooth out, just where I cut it off the bat. I could smooth this just a little bit with my fingertip. If I needed to trim it a little bit, I could put it on a chuck and trim a little bit off of that edge. The important thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to make the holes for the chopsticks. So the chopsticks are going to go across on either side of this knob. Like that. I've got drill bits I make the holes with. So I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to make marks where I want to make the holes. hole right there. I'm not using a drill, I'm just using my fingers to cut the hole with the drill bit. I'm doing it from the inside, so I know exactly how high to make it above that lid. Okay, so that's going to fit in there like that. And then I'll make a mark where the other hole goes. So it's going to go right there. Chopstick tapers. So this end is thinner than this end, so I need a bigger drill bit for this hole. And I need to keep shrinkage in mind. So what I'm going to do, it's going to be easier, I'm going to push the needle through. So when I have my mark on the outside, it's going to be a lot easier. Now when I'm using it, the chopstick's going to go in here. Make that hole a little cleaner. Alright, it's going to go in there, cross. Now it's the other one. It'll sit there right next to the knob and help hold that on. And then I have to do the same thing on the other side. Push that needle through. Okay, so there we go. When it's all full of sauerkraut, you've got your weight inside, you've got the lid on, and then you've got the chopsticks on either side of the lid so that this lid doesn't lift up. Then maybe put even more weight on top of it if you need to. So one last thing I'm going to do now is, now I'm ready to wire under this. Okay, so that's a fermenting crock.